I'm going to show you 5 ways to save or export your images outside of Bridge, including the most recently added one at the beginning of 2022. Here I am in Bridge. Way 1, I'm going to select all the images I've already completed editing, a whole batch of images. Go to the Tools menu, ask Bridge to ask her husband, her groom, Photoshop, to process images. Image processor. Open it, Photoshop launches, you set up where you want to save images. If you want to do them one by one, I'm saying save to my desktop. Save them as a file type, JPEG. Highest quality is, by the way, a 12. If you doubt me, try typing a higher number. It tells you, hey, that's 12. Resize to fit, yes or no? Yes, no, yes for Facebook or Instagram as an example. Convert it to a smaller box of crayons, sRGB? No, I don't do that. I want all my color. Don't reduce my color, please, just to make it look like the lowest common denominator on the internet. No thanks. And then you just run it. That's it. Now, if you look, you could also, and here's the value of way 1, the Tools menu image processor. You can set up various variables and save it, this is the magic, in 3 different file types with one push of the button. Now, all of these images will be saved as JPEGs with these settings, as Photoshop documents also, and as TIFFs with a different file size, a different dimension. And I can also include my copyright image data just in case I haven't already plugged it in, and include my original color profile before I convert. All right, that's it. That's way 1. I say run, and we're off to the races. By the time I get out to my desktop, which is where I told it to save them, there'll be a folder called JPEG waiting for me, and my exported image or images will be resting there for my use. Way 2 is to open all your images at the same time. Command R in Camera Raw, the editor. Now this one looks like it's disappeared in the new Camera Raw. Watch, I'm going to select all again, and it selected all of the thumbnails on the side. The new version of save is buried. You have to hover over one of the thumbnails. What? And hit the little 3 buttons in order to save images. That's crazy talk. We're not going to do it. So let me show you the better way. Okay, select all your thumbnails and just do Command S. Save, like you would in any other program. That's the new way. Just do Command S for save. Now the benefit for this save box, which is built within Adobe Camera Raw, you can't save multiple file types at the same time like the image processor, but you can set up various settings. And one of my favorites here is limit the file size to a particular disk space. For example, I'm going to enter a contest and they say my images can't be higher than 2 megabytes. I can limit the file size. None of these exported files will be larger than 2 megs, and so on. I can sharpen. That wasn't in the image processor. And benefit, I can go right back to the top after I've set these parameters and save it as a new preset. Save it as a save preset. And all of these are my save presets. I've already saved those. All right, so the benefit of this way, saving through the Adobe Camera Raw editor, is that you can save presets, limit the file size, and sharpen. Cancel, cancel. There are a couple more ways. They're under the window menu in Adobe Bridge. One is called the export panel. If you see a check, then you see the export panel. Another is the publish panel. Let me show you that one before I wind up with the export. Publish panel is here on the side. Publish files automatically to Adobe Stock. If you have set up an Adobe Stock account and want to sell your photos, you can easily click the Publish to Adobe Stock, drag and drop your images, continue. It's converting the DNGs or the RAW files into uploadable JPEGs or TIFFs. That's that. Let's leave. I'm going to cancel that. Are you sure? I'm sure. And you'll also see that you can do that to your portfolio right there from Publish panel. Let's go back to Windows and the Export panel. Now the Export panel I already have open. I just have to go find it. Oh, here it is. And what's beneficial about the current Export panel is that you can also create presets. This is my least favorite of the 4. I can create a preset but I don't see sharpen. I don't see limit my file size. And the other negative about this, if I drag my images over to one of those export types, I would think it's off to the races. So this is another thing I don't care for here. You drag it and drop it, it says 1 of 3, but then you still have to start the export. So there are a lot more steps there for a lot less payoff. Adobe only added one major feature in the 2022 release of Bridge. Now there are wild updates to Adobe Camera Raw, which is within Bridge. That's another topic for another training course available at BPSOP. I digress. The only major update in Bridge 2022 was this new 5th way to export. Now, it's not so much a brand new way to export as it is a way to combine some previous exports, which you've just seen, into one new savable preset. Let's get started and show you what it is. Don't be confused by this particular menu item. This new feature is called Workflow, but there is a Workflow panel I don't suggest you open. Now, previously we said open the export panel. Let's maybe even say open the publish panel. But not so here. And here's why. They went further. They built not just a panel, but an actual new workspace. And so when you go to Workspace and you choose the Workflow workspace, it automatically opens the panel. And it doesn't work that way in reverse. Should you open the Workflow panel, you don't actually get the whole package. You do get the whole package if you go to Workspace and choose Workflow. And now you'll see you're in something very interesting. There are many little panels within the Workflow. It's not just the Workflow panel. Here it is. No, you see these, this window workspace for Workflow has actually added a task diagram and a little content panel, not to mention this workflow details. So I've got a multiple set here of panels in the Workflow workspace. Let's get to work. At the bottom, I'm seeing whatever folder I had been in. Now let me go backward. I'm going to go back to my regular workspace. Now mine's called Rick's Metadata. Yours might be called Essentials. But back in Rick's Metadata, you'll see the last folder I had chosen. Here it is, a wedding. They're lovely. The last folder I was viewing, I was looking at when I went to the Workflow workspace is what automatically populates this content region. Very good. Now I could go ahead and just use any current workflow I've already created and saved. So I'm going to start with that, and then I'm going to teach you how to make your own. I've already got one called Rick Burress Sequence, copyright symbol Rick Burress Sequence. So if I grab a few of the images that I want from underneath here at the content, here's how it works. Much like the export panel, I have to pick it up and drag it on to my chosen workflow. Just again, like the export panel, it's not completing it, it's not even starting it until I hit the Start Workflow button. Now I'm going to do that. Let's run just a sample test. What you may not have noticed, but it did in fact occur, is that a new folder showed up for me out here on my desktop. And it's running my files. And it's done. Let's remember that I just ran that, and this is going to stay there. This will remain. This is going to be a historic record of the workflows I've run, unless or until I clear them. Clearing them doesn't do anything except remove them from the history. I'm going to close for now. And then I can open a folder that it created out on my desktop. And sure enough, what this workflow does is it saves my images It saves my images. But what's more is that it added the copyright symbol, dash Rick Burress, and you'll see it sequenced 001, 002, 003, and so on. That's the result of my workflow. Now I'll throw that folder away and show you how this sequence was created. I'm going to open an existing sequence. If I were a chef, I'd say, hey, I already have a cake in the oven. Hey, let's go see how it turns out when it's all well. I'm going to click on Rick's sequence. And it populated these two panels. It said what Rick decided to do was to batch rename any images he drags to this sequence. He begins by batch renaming. And then he changes each image's format from DNG to a JPEG, a TIFF, a Photoshop file, for example. And he resizes it to a particular dimension. And then in the last minute, he tries to add a little extra metadata in case it was missing from any of these files already. Now let's go take a peek at each of these steps. If I wanted to add, and I in fact have added some steps, and I'll show you how to do that in a moment. But let's go look at the batch rename step. Come to the side. While it's highlighted in blue, it shows you what that step looked like. Now I've got these little triangles twisted open, and it might be easier for our brains to just see there are three components currently. Workflow preset name. What do you want to call it? Let's twist that open. I just decided I want to call it this. Call it that and save it. Boy, that was easy. Where do you want to save it? I said in a specific folder, please. Every time I run this preset, I wanted to save to this specific folder. Now, you could say, and the default is, save it in whatever the original folder was for Brock and Emily's wedding. But I'm going to say, no, please, go out and browse and point to my desktop. And by doing that, it now is going to save a folder on my desktop. Should there be a subfolder on your desktop? Or do you just want to sloppily throw all your images around on your desktop? Oh, please, 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 let's create a subfolder name. Now I'm going to change the name. Let's call it Client Pics. New folder name. What if multiple files wind up with the same name? It's not inevitably going to happen. It's pretty rare. In fact, I can't imagine how it would happen based on how I name these. But if it does, it says manage my conflicts and create a unique name. Keep both files, but give one a -1, a -2, something like that. Manage my conflicts. Let me close those top triangles, and let's really discuss the third one. This is really what's going to go on for me. Again, batch renaming is not new to this workflow. We've had the ability to batch rename. All the new workflow is doing is giving me access to those already saved batch rename presets. You see some here. Now I could also create a new one right here, and that's the save a new one button. It looks like a down to your hard drive icon. But I've chosen one I've called Copyright Rick Burress Sequence. How will it behave? Well, change the entire file name to this new text. What new text? Wipe out the file name and do this? Yes, please. And then run a sequence starting with 1. Please use 3 digits. 001 is what I'm saying. That's the only major change I've made. And it says, well, let me show you an example at the bottom. If you had a file called, for example, image.jpg, it will now be turned into copyright-Rick_Burress_001.jpg. Is that cool with you? It's so cool with me. Wow, that was a lot of stuff to remember. I'm glad I only have to do this once, and I save it as a preset. I'm not finished. Then I change my format. Only this new item shows up. To what file type? Ooh, Notice I could even export DNGs in this way. So here we go. I'm changing things. I'm selecting even my color space, my bit depth, and so on. Wow, that's a lot of stuff. Resize. Resize to what size? Well, Rick Burress for Instagram and for Facebook, I don't let my images be any larger than 2400 pixels on their long edge. Resolution, unless you're printing, doesn't matter. Resolution on the internet doesn't matter. This does, just the pixels. If I were to be working with a file that's smaller than 2400, please don't enlarge it to 2400. It loses quality. I'm just saying, don't ever go up, only go down. There's a resize. Last item for me, apply metadata. Include the original metadata. If I've gone through the work in Bridge of creating metadata, please add it all, but not location info. If I have pictures of children or grandchildren and we're at a park, I don't want to build that GPS data, for example, let's say, into every image and give predators access to that data. So everything except location info. That's why location info is separate. Just security, privacy, protection. And if I haven't yet included any metadata, go ahead on the way out and apply a metadata template, which we learned we could create. So it's not new, but it's an additional option for us. How to apply, where to apply. This is something lovely. But I would also want you to add, make sure that these files I'm exporting right now get added any extra words. It's a wedding. I might just make sure wedding is in there. Oh, not weeding. Please don't type like me. Their last name is Watterson. Maybe I just want to make sure that that shows up as a keyword. Whatever, you see what I'm saying? I can add whatever I want. And those keywords, we learned how valuable they were, will automatically be added to those items. Okay, that's how it's set. You didn't see that when I just dragged and ran it, and we were done. I have another one. Do you want to save it? Nah, I want to discard it. I have another one saved called Workflow, Thumbnails Workflow for Arizona Highways Magazine, a customer of mine. What do? We change the format to something. We save it to a particular file size. Now I'm saving this as thumbnails. So please very much reduce my images. Just a folder of thumbnails. My customer can't print these files at high resolution, but they can see them and decide which ones they might want to look at in a large file type. So I'm just saving thumbnails, which is why I gave it that name. Rename, whatever you do, use the current file name, whatever the file is. Then I want to add text. How did I do that? I hit the add button. Add what? Add text and underscore. Then what? Then I want to add button, more text, THMB for thumb. So if the file's name was image.jpg, the new file name will be image underscore thumb JPEG. Cool. Apply metadata. Whatever the particular issue might be, spring edition, let's say, 2022, let's say, special issue, whatever, I can add that on this job going out. Look up, save. But you and I are going to create our first. I've walked you through some delicious cakes already in the oven. Let's create our own new workflow. Do you see where I am? New workflow. Here it is. It wants you to start. What would you like to begin with? Let's change the format. I'm just going to have some fun. Pick any of these in any order. By the way, these are the only 3 things you can choose from. The first, they try to teach you, pick one of me. Okay, change the format. Dink. We get to work. You are a student, so we're going to say it's the student workflow. Save it. That was easy. Where are we going to save it? Original file? Nope. We're saving these up to our desktop. Got it. Into a workflow folder. Now, listen to me. This would be fun if you were going to create a workflow for all of your BPSOP assignments. Well, that gives me a whole new name. Assignments for BPSOP. Because you know that we want a particular file size. We don't want your monstrous files, let's say, but it's a pain to try to figure out what all that should be and where they go. So, assignments for BPSOP to my desktop into a folder called, I'm just going to copy and paste, assignments for BPSOP is what the folder will be called. JPEGs, please. What quality type? Well, we've learned we could go as high as 12. Let's do it. It's for Brian Peterson after all. Okay, now I want to add another step. Oh, no. Oh, it's here at the bottom. The first 4, remember when I first clicked, it gave me a choice of 4, but now you got to go and activate it with the plus sign. Now I want to rename. Let's just say I have something called default. That's not going to do it for me. So instead, I want whatever's going on. I want the text to show your current file name. I don't need the date created. No, thank you. Then an underscore. I don't need a sequence. No, thank you. An underscore and then what? Maybe I'll say then add BPSOP. So it's going to take your current file names, and when it creates this export, it's going to use the current file name and add BPSOP. Now, what you might do is say, not the current file name. I'd rather it add this text. It would be helpful for we as instructors to see who sent me the file. So assignments for BPSOP on the desktop in a folder, your name underscore BPSOP or whatever you want to call it. Now I think I might want to add, and I'm just showing off, some sequence. Each one of them, if I send in 3, I'll have this 1 or 001, 2, 3. I'm only going to get 3, so I'm just going to say, give me 1 digit, please. Blah, blah, blah. Rick Burress, BPSOP, file 1, file 2, file 3, etc. Here's what it will look like. BPSOP 1. After BPSOP, I decide I'd rather have another underscore or a dash. Oh, there you go. That's better. I've added that. Very good. So far, my workflow is only going to change the format and batch rename. Let's add another. Resize. Resize it to, on the long edge, pick a value. This is fine with me. I like this. Don't enlarge. I'm done. After the resize, let's add apply metadata. And all I want to make sure is that whatever's been going on so far, maybe you want everything, including the GPS, with your metadata template, with these additional keywords. BPSOP, comma, let's call it the ultimate guide to Adobe Bridge. I'm just making something up. Assignment, and so on. Whatever else you could think of. Hey, but it's for Rick, so we might as well add that. I'm finished. I'm going to look up and save the works. And now I have in my workflow panel assignments for BPSOP. Let's do it. Oh, they're going to love this and this. And that's just adorable. I'm just grabbing the images I want. Drag it to assignments for BPSOP. It's waiting for me to hit workflow. By the way, I could run multiple workflows. That one's ready. That one's ready. I could load another and another and another and another and then start them running. I mentioned earlier that this would show up in my history. It's finished. They've been processed. We started with this. But now it's running the next workflow and the next workflow and so on. It's adding those folders to my hard drive. That one's finished. This one's working. Now notice when this is complete, for me, it's just me and clutter. I'm going to try to eliminate the clutter. So when this one's finished, I'm going to hit clear the list. It doesn't clear my jobs, it just clears the history. Are you sure? Oh yes. Good, clean history, no clutter if you don't want to see the history. Close. I'm going to sneak out to my desktop. There are the assignments for BPSOP. There is the BPSOP folder with the other group of images, all sequenced. So there are various different exports. My gosh, that's a killer way to export. Thanks Adobe, I think, for a brand new, very customizable way. That is the fifth and currently final way to save or export your files for your customers in another file type or format outside of Bridge. We need to do it, of course, because the customer can't open DNGs. They may need Photoshop files or TIFFs or JPEGs. There you have it, folks. If you have questions, please feel free to ask me. It's been a pleasure.